Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're diving into Friedrich Schiller's play, Wilhelm Tell,
Yes.
a play that's considered a cornerstone of German literature.
Oh, absolutely. A real classic.
And I think we both agree that it's
Yeah.
one that's really stood the test of time.
It's a story that really captures the spirit of rebellion and that fight for freedom. You know, even though it was written in the early 1800s and set in 14th century Switzerland, its themes of resisting tyranny and standing up for what's right,
Yeah.
they still resonate so powerfully today.
So for our listener, before we really get into the nitty-gritty, can you give us a quick rundown of the play's main plot and themes?
Absolutely. Wilhelm Tell is set against the backdrop of Austrian oppression in Switzerland. The Swiss people are chafing under the rule of Gessler, this tyrannical Austrian governor who represents everything that the Swiss despise. Arbitrary power cruelty and a disregard for their traditions and freedoms. The play follows a number of characters, but most notably Wilhelm Tell, a skilled hunter known for his courage and his marksmanship, as they navigate this oppressive environment and ultimately rise up against their oppressors.
Okay, so tyranny versus freedom is clearly a big theme here.
It is a big one.
What else should our listener be paying attention to as we go through the story?
Well, the play also explores this idea of what it truly means to be a nation. Schiller was writing at a time when Germany itself was divided and yearning for unification.
Okay.
So you see that reflected in the play, in the way that the different Swiss cantons come together to fight for a common cause. It raises questions about unity, about identity, and what sacrifices people are willing to make for their country.
And I imagine the use of violence to achieve those goals is also a major theme.
It is.
Especially with a character like Tell, who's known for his skill with a crossbow.
You hit the nail on the head. The play really grapples with the moral complexities of using violence in the pursuit of justice and freedom, it asks. Is violence ever justified? And what are the consequences, both personal and political, of resorting to it? These are questions that Schiller doesn't offer easy answers to.
Right.
He leaves the audience to wrestle with them.
Fascinating. So with that overview in mind, let's get into the story itself.
Okay.
The play starts off with a bang, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The very first scene plunges us right into the heart of the conflict. We're on Lake Lucerne during a raging storm, and we meet Wilhelm Tell, who's risking his own life to ferry a fugitive named Baumgarten across these dangerous waters.
And this Baumgarten isn't just some random guy, is he?
No, he's a symbol of resistance. He's killed Wolfenschiessen, an Austrian official who's known for his cruelty, and now he's fleeing for his life. Tell's willingness to help him, despite the personal risk, immediately establishes him as a man of courage and action, someone who stands up against injustice.
So right from the start, Schiller throws us into this world where defying authority can have life-or-death consequences.
Exactly, and this sense of danger and defiance permeates the entire play. In the next few scenes, we see how widespread the discontent with Austrian rule truly is. We meet Stauffacher, a leader from the canton of Schwyz, and his wife Gertrude.
And she's not exactly a shrinking violet, is she?
Not at all. Gertrude is a force to be reckoned with. She actually encourages her husband to take a more active role in resisting the Austrians. She challenges those traditional gender roles, and she argues passionately for the need to fight for freedom, even if it means risking everything.
And then we meet the big bad himself, Gessler, the Austrian governor.
Yeah.
He's not exactly a subtle villain, is he?
He is the epitome of tyrannical arrogance. One of the play's most famous scenes involves Gessler placing a hat on a pole in the town square and demanding that all Swiss citizens bow to it.
Wow.
It's a blatant attempt to humiliate them, to force them to acknowledge his absolute authority.
It's like something out of a cartoonishly evil dictator's playbook.
Exactly. But Schiller uses it brilliantly to illustrate the depths of Austrian oppression and to fuel the Swiss people's resentment. This hat becomes a symbol of everything they hate about Austrian rule.
And then there's Melchthal, whose story is just heartbreaking.
Oh, it is.
His father is brutally blinded by another Austrian official, Lendenberg, for refusing to bow to his authority.
It's a terrible story. But Melchthal's story raises the stakes of the conflict. It shows that resistance, even passive resistance, can have horrific consequences. It's also a turning point in the play, as Melchthal's desire for revenge pushes him and others around him towards more active forms of rebellion.
So we have these individual acts of defiance.
Yeah.
But we also see the beginnings of a more organized resistance movement.
Precisely. And this all culminates in Act I with the secret meeting at the Rütli, a meadow high in the Swiss Alps. Representatives from the three cantons, Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwald, come together to swear an oath of allegiance to each other and to their shared goal of freedom.
So this is where the seeds of the Swiss Confederacy are sown.
Yes. It's a powerful scene, full of symbolism and a sense of shared destiny. These men from different backgrounds and regions are united in their opposition to Austrian rule. They're willing to risk their lives for a future where they can govern themselves free from tyranny.
It's interesting that they choose to meet in this remote mountain meadow.
Yeah.
What do you think Schiller is trying to convey with that setting?
I think the Rütli represents the heart of Switzerland, both geographically and symbolically. It's a place of natural beauty and rugged independence, far removed from the artificiality and corruption of the Austrian court. It also harkens back to a time before Austrian domination, a time when the Swiss were free and self-governing.
And that sense of a shared history, a longing for a lost freedom, is palpable in this scene. It's almost like Schiller is creating a national myth, a founding story for the Swiss nation.
You're absolutely right. He's tapping into some powerful emotions. The idea of a people reclaiming their rightful heritage. And it's a theme that resonates throughout the play as the Swiss characters constantly invoke the memory of their ancestors, those who fought for freedom in the past.
So by the end of Act I, the stage is set for a major confrontation. We have the seeds of rebellion planted, and we know the stakes are incredibly high. What happens next? Where does Schiller take us in Act II?
Well, Act II, it delves deeper into the complexities of this brewing rebellion.
Right.
And it introduces us to some new characters who really embody those internal conflicts within Swiss society.
You're talking about the young nobleman?
Yeah.
Rudenz.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
the nephew of Addinghausen.
oh, yes.
The aging patriarch we met briefly in Act I.
Rudenz is fascinating because he represents that allure of the Austrian court. He's drawn to the power, the wealth, the sophistication that the Austrian Empire seems to offer.
So he's almost a counterpoint, then, to the rebellious spirit that we see in characters like Tell and Stauffacher.
Precisely. He embodies those Swiss who see accommodation with Austria as the more pragmatic path, perhaps even a path to personal advancement.
And his uncle Addinghausen, who represents the old guard, the staunch Swiss patriots, tries desperately to warn him.
He does.
There's that great scene where Addinghausen talks about the importance of freedom, of staying true to one's roots.
Yes.
He says something like, "The free man stands alone, but the slave is bound to thousands."
One of my favorite lines from the play, it speaks to the core of what Schiller's trying to convey. This idea that true freedom comes from independence.
Oh, great.
From resisting that temptation to compromise one's values for the sake of security or personal gain.
And this tension between staying true to oneself and being tempted by power plays out in Rudenz's relationship with Bertha von Bruneck, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
She's a noblewoman who is also under Gessler's control.
She is. Bertha represents both love and political maneuvering. She's caught between her feelings for Rudenz and the pressure to conform to the expectations of her class and of her guardian Gessler.
So we have these personal dilemmas unfolding, but the rebellion itself is gaining momentum.
Yeah.
The oath-taking ceremony at the Rütli, which we briefly touched upon, takes center stage in Act II.
It does.
Schiller really goes all out in describing this event, doesn't he?
He does. It's almost like he's painting this grand, epic fresco of the birth of a nation.
Wow.
He describes that rugged landscape, the solemnity of the oath, that sense of shared purpose among those men who gather there. It's a scene that's designed to evoke a powerful emotional response in the audience.
It feels almost religious, this swearing of allegiance under the open sky.
Yes, and I think that's intentional. Schiller is tapping into the power of ritual, the idea that this oath is sacred, unbreakable. It binds these men together in a way that transcends personal ambition or regional differences. They are committing themselves to a cause greater than themselves, the creation of a free Switzerland.
And the practical aspects of the rebellion are also coming into focus, aren't they?
They are.
We learn about the plans to capture Austrian strongholds, to raise the Landsturm, the local militia.
Yes, the play moves from those lofty ideals to concrete plans of action. And this is important because it highlights those challenges of rebellion. It's one thing to swear an oath.
Right.
It's quite another to actually confront a powerful, well-armed enemy.
And it also raises that question of violence which you mentioned earlier as a major theme.
It does.
These men are preparing for a fight that will inevitably involve bloodshed.
Exactly. And Schiller doesn't shy away from that reality. He shows us the preparations, the gathering of weapons, those strategic discussions. He wants the audience to understand that this fight for freedom will come at a cost.
So we have these parallel threads running through Act 2. The personal struggles of characters like Rudenz and Bertha, the growing momentum of the rebellion, and the looming specter of violence. Where does Schiller take us from here?
Act 3, it brings us to the heart of the conflict, both the personal and the political,
Right.
with that iconic scene that everyone knows even if they haven't read the play.
Exactly, the apple shooting scene.
Ah, yes. It's become so ingrained in popular culture, it almost overshadows the rest of the play.
Yeah, it really has.
But within the story, it's a pivotal moment, a culmination of the tensions that have been building up.
And it's not just about Tell's marksmanship, right?
No, not at all.
There's so much more going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. On one level, it's a test of skill, a father's desperate gamble to save his son's life, but it's also this powerful symbol of defiance against tyranny.
Right.
Gessler, in his cruelty, forces Tell to choose between obedience and his son's life, and by making that impossible shot, Tell not only saves his son, but also exposes the true nature of Gessler's power. Arbitrary and unjust.
And there's that extra layer of tension, too, with the second arrow that Tell has hidden.
Exactly. That detail reveals the depth of Tell's resolve. He's prepared to fight back, even if it means risking everything. That second arrow, intended for Gessler, had he harmed, Walter shows that Tell isn't just a skilled marksman. He's a man of principle, willing to defend his family and his freedom, even at the cost of his own life.
And this act also sees Tell's escape, which is almost as dramatic as the apple shot itself.
It's a thrilling sequence, highlighting Tell's resourcefulness and his deep connection to the natural world. Remember how he navigates the storm on Lake Lucerne? Using his knowledge of the winds and the currents to outwit his captors, it's almost as if nature itself is conspiring to help him.
It's a recurring motif, I think, throughout the play.
It is.
This idea of the Swiss landscape is a source of strength and freedom, a stark contrast to the confines of Austrian rule.
Yes, and that contrast becomes even more pronounced in Act 4 with the death of Addinghausen.
Okay.
The old baron confined to his castle represents the passing of an old order, while Tell free in the mountains embodies the spirit of this new Switzerland.
And Addinghausen's deathbed scene is really moving.
It is.
He blesses the rebellion and encourages Rudenz to finally embrace his Swiss heritage, to fight for the cause of freedom.
It's a powerful moment of reconciliation,
a
passing of the torch from one generation to the next.
And Rudenz's transformation is complete at that point.
It is.
He rejects the allure of the Austrian court and pledges his allegiance to his people. He even reveals that he knows about the secret oath at the Rutli.
He does.
And his decision is fueled not just by patriotism, but also by love.
Right.
He learns that Bertha, his beloved, has been taken by Gessler's men, adding a personal stake to his fight against tyranny.
Right, and just as this rebellion seems to be gaining momentum, Schiller throws in another twist, the assassination of the Austrian emperor by his own nephew.
Talk about shaking things up. How does this news impact the Swiss?
It creates a power vacuum, a sense of uncertainty. On one hand, the Swiss are no longer bound by those oaths of allegiance to the emperor. Okay.
But on the other hand, it's unclear what will happen next.
Right.
Will the new emperor be any better? Will this chaos lead to even more violence?
So the stakes are raised even higher as we head into the final act. What does Act V have in store for us? What's the ultimate resolution to this struggle for freedom?
Act V is a whirlwind of action and emotion. We see the signal fires being lit on those mountaintops, calling the Swiss to arms. There's a sense of exhilaration as the rebellion erupts, but also a realization that the fight will be brutal and costly.
And Schiller doesn't shy away from showing the consequences of that fight.
No, he doesn't.
We see the destruction of the scaffold in Altdorf, a symbol of Austrian oppression, but we also hear about the burning of the Rossburg fortress and the loss of life on both sides.
It underscores those complexities of revolution. There's that sense of triumph as the Swiss people rise up, but also a recognition that violence, even in the service of a just cause, leaves scars. And amidst all this chaos, Rudenz proves himself to be a true leader, rescuing Bertha from the burning fortress and demonstrating his unwavering commitment to the Swiss cause.
It's a redemption arc worthy of a Shakespearean hero. He goes from being this hesitant, almost ambivalent figure to a courageous and selfless leader.
But of course, the most anticipated moment of the play is the final confrontation between Tell and Gessler.
It's a scene that's been building from the very beginning, from that first act of defiance. When Tell refused to bow to the hat, Schiller stages it brilliantly, with Tell waiting in the holloway, a narrow passage in the mountains, for Gessler to pass.
And when the moment comes, Tell takes his shot, killing the tyrant and finally freeing the Swiss people from his oppressive rule. It's a cathartic moment.
It is.
A culmination of everything the play has been building towards.
But it also raises these profound questions about the use of violence. Is Tell justified in taking a life, even the life of a tyrant? What are the long-term consequences of this act? Schiller doesn't offer easy answers, leaving the audience to grapple with these moral dilemmas.
And just when it seems like the story has reached its conclusion, we get one final twist. The arrival of the imperial messenger, demanding that the Swiss surrender the assassins of the emperor.
It's a test of their newfound resolve. Will they bow to this new authority, or will they stand firm in their hard-won independence?
And their answer is a resounding NO. They refuse to surrender, choosing to defend their freedom and their right to self-determination. It's a powerful ending, a testament to that spirit of resistance that runs through the entire play.
Wilhelm Tell is more than just a historical drama. It's a timeless story about that struggle for freedom, the complexities of violence, and the enduring power of the human spirit to resist oppression.
So for our listener, if you haven't already, I highly recommend diving into this masterpiece. You'll find yourself swept away by the story, challenged by the themes, and inspired by the characters who dare to fight for what they believe in. Until our next deep dive, happy reading.